So today we were working on a variety of different projects that we need to finish up for open house, which is next week. But they all involve some piece of technology. At the lower levels of SAMR, we have some working on ST Math, and they're trying to move through the levels to build up their fluency in those math skills and the computation skills. And then we have some students who are actually completing some writing in Google Apps. So they're second graders, they are able to log into Google Apps, they know how to use the editing tools to spell check, to revise, to move, copy and paste, to move words around, and then they can add images into their Google. And then those will be printed and displayed for open house as well. And that's kind of a substitution, but I wouldn't say it's a substitution because what I found is that when they're writing in paper, they're less apt to revise and edit. They don't want to revise and edit. You conference with them and they're like, everything's fine, it's good, I'm ready to turn it in. But when they type something in Google and you ask them to revise, they're much more willing to go back and add periods, change words, check the spelling. So it's substitution level, but I think it's enhancing their revising and editing skills at a higher level. We had a group trying to get their robot to work.
Wait, it needs to be the same color.
So next paragraph.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No, that's blue. No, because it needs to be light blue. Yeah.
Bluetooth didn't connect, but that's okay. So they went on the Chromebooks and they started practicing coding, which was what they were going to do with the robot anyway. So they worked in December on the Hour of Code. So they learned a little bit about how to program games online. So they know how to do a little bit of computer coding. And so they're doing that. And that has really helped them with problem solving, with science, with especially science, because it's similar to the scientific method. You plan something, you design it, you observe what happens, and then you redesign. So that's giving them a connection there to engineering and design and science. And then I had my last group was working on reading, and what they're going to do is record themselves reading a page of a book fluently, and then they are partner working, so they're listening and rating each other on how fluently and how well they're reading. It's actually a 3rd grade level book, so they're really excited that they can read a 3rd grade level book. So they're really excited about recording it, and then they're going to turn those recordings into QR codes so they can share with their families.
Liliana Bell was from Idaho. She had moved to Hollywood in 1922. She was 26 years old. Her boss was like her spunky nature.
How would we rate him? 1, 2, 3, or 4? 4. Very fluent.
Wait, no, I'm not giving him a 3 because he messed up on something.
He messed up on something, but what did he do that was really cool when he messed up on the word? He reread it and did it correctly, right? Good. All right, ready, Donovan? 4s? Okay, let's see if Donovan can get a 4.
Each other on those lights and well after an hour.
Announced when she she was very proud of the blue car she bought.
I would say that the reading one is a little bit higher on the SAMR model because that's something that we could never really do before. Like to be able to go back and instantly hear yourself read and see how you're self-correcting and see where you're reading fluently and where you're not reading fluently, that has not been possible before we had technology in the classroom. They simply couldn't, and the rate for turnover for me to tell them, was so much longer. And this is kind of only their 2nd time recording themselves, because all year I've been recording them. So they're used to being recorded and listening to it, but now I'm giving them the responsibility to make the recording and create the QR code. So we're moving up, getting a little more creative and giving them more of the responsibility. So the really neat things about implementing technology in the classroom is that you can see, and students can take more ownership of their learning, is what I've noticed. They can be more engaged, and I think the speed at which they can see the progress happening is shrunk incredibly, which creates more excitement for them and keeps them more engaged. And so it's easier to keep them engaged in reading a chapter book, which is a hard thing to do when you're 7 years old with 10 chapters, but you are engaged because you're hearing it back, you're reading it, you're seeing it on the iPad that your friends have read it, you're able to take pictures of it, you're able to do things like that. So they are staying more engaged with the technology and pushing themselves further. I see a lot of the kids, especially with like the learning management systems, the Hour of Code and the ST Math, I see them starting to take responsibility for their learning more. And AR too, because they're seeing how many words have I read, how many, they're checking in, they're monitoring themselves. Even with the Class Dojo that we used, that's a great way for them to self-monitor their behavior. Like they just asked me this morning, our goal is to get to 100 points by the end of the day on our behavior, on the end of the week on our behavior. We're only at 37, and they were using math skills to calculate how much further they need to go, how many more days they had. So I think it's really integrating all the, content areas, and it's making it more of their responsibility, and they're becoming more aware of how their learning progresses instead of me being the one in charge of all the learning. They're in charge now, so super exciting.